From Interfaith Alliance, this is State of Belief Radio. I'm your host, Reverend Welton Gaddy. Gay and lesbian rights have been in the headlines this year, both in the ongoing culture wars and within several Christian denominations. You know that flashpoint issues have included marriage equality and the ordination of LGBT persons. But of course, none of that is new. October 6th marked the 43rd anniversary of the founding of the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches, when Reverend Troy Perry answered the call to create a place for LGBT Christians to worship and feel loved and accepted just as they are. And in 1999, the Reverend Elder Jimmy Creech was defrocked by the United Methodist Church for presiding over the Holy Union of two women in North Carolina. He'd already faced possible punishment for serving as a celebrant at a same-gender covenant ceremony 2 years earlier. Ordained in 1970, Reverend Creech was and is an outspoken advocate and activist supporting churches' acceptance of LGBT persons. Today, as co-founder of the organization Faith in America, he travels widely and continues to be a leading voice on this issue. Reverend Creech has received more honors and awards than we could ever name here on this show and still have time to interview him. He is the author of the new book, Adam's Gift, about his experiences of the church's struggle to welcome and accept lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons. Let me be right up front with you and say that this is a man I've known for years, loved for years, and appreciate. And I'm so very pleased to welcome Jimmy Creech to State of Belief Radio today. Welcome, Jimmy.
Thank you, Welton. You're very gracious. It's wonderful to be with you.
I know you're speaking to us by phone from Nebraska, and we're going to talk about the events in which you've been participating this week. But I want to start with some history. I think it's fair to say you've come to be a legend in the battle to include sexual minorities in the church. How did that start? What moved you to make this such a central part of your ministry?
Well, it was not something I intended. It was not a goal in any sense of the word. I understand myself to be a pastor, and I love being a pastor. And I was serving a congregation in eastern North Carolina, a small town, in 1984, loving my work as a pastor of that congregation, when a member of the congregation came out to me as a gay man. He was the first person who ever self-identified to me as a gay person. Mm-hmm. And he talked to me about his experience, both in the church and in society at large, and told me things I was completely naive about, things I did not know, things that really upset me quite a bit. I'd known him. I call him Adam. He is the person whose name I give to my book, Adam's Gift. His gift to me was telling me his story. I'd known him for 3 years. He was a leader in the community, a leader in the church, someone I admired, respected greatly. He was a faithful Christian, gentle, kind person. It not only changed my thinking about gay people, but it changed my thinking about the role the church plays in the persecution of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. It helped me begin to understand that persecution.
The subtitle for your book is a memoir of a pastor's calling to defy the church's persecution of lesbians and gays. We're talking to a guy who was not an activist in the LGBT community, but a pastor who saw a wrong and tried to right it. Isn't that correct? Yes, that is very correct. How do you feel about the progress that's been made, and I guess how much farther do we have to go?
Well, I begin by, first of all, acknowledging there's a long way for us to go still. But when I look back over the last 24 years, since I became active in 1987, on the grand scale, we have had major changes take place in the Episcopal Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Lutheran Church. Polling now indicates that 74% of Roman Catholics support either marriage or civil unions for same-gender couples. They support adoption rights for same-gender couples, employment protection for same-gender people, loving people. We've repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. There's very serious discussion with a possibility of actually repealing the Defense of Marriage Act.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that has been done. There's also been reaction. Many of the states, I think 31 of the states now have a constitutional amendment defining marriages between one man and one woman. There is still a lot of religious bigotry, language that is very hurtful and harmful that's being spoken from national leaders in the religious community.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that still needs to be done.
Jimmy, I several years ago, after a bout with depression, wrote a book on depression, and I know out of that experience that the book writing does something for readers, but it also does something to the author. Your book, Adam's Gift, a memoir of a pastor's calling to defy the church's persecution of lesbian and gays, it is a massive memoir of sensitivity. What did it do to you to revisit all of that?
It was very painful. A lot of what I tell is about the pain I've seen others experience, other lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people and their families experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's also about my own losses, and it's not intended to be a sort of self-pity kind of thing, but that was the reality. That's the story. And getting back in touch with the events and the consequences of those events, and being able to tell the story truthfully and candidly required immersing myself once again in the pain of
mm-hmm.
those moments.
Your writing and work are both informed with a moral and spiritual clarity that is precious and, I'm sad to say, rare. Where does that come from for you?
I laugh. I'm asked that question often, and I know it sounds simplistic, but I have to say that it really comes from what I learned in church as a child and as a youth.
Yeah.
I recall in our Methodist Youth Fellowship meetings, every Sunday night before we left, we would sing, "Are ye able, said the Master,
mm-hmm.
to be crucified with me?" And you can't sing that over and over again that much and without it doing something to you.
Right.
It was the stories of Jesus. It was the stories of compassion, love your neighbor, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those teachings shaped my life mm-hmm. and shaped who I understand myself to be and what I believe God calls us to do, and that is to make the world a better place, to bring God into the world, and that means bringing justice and love and compassion into the world in which we live.
See, in our church, we sang, "Jesus loves the little children of the world, all the little children of the world," and I thought they meant it.
Yeah.
But as you found out, as I found out, there is some gap between the music and the realities on the ground.
Yeah, and the marvelous thing is the teaching survived the realities. I had that same experience. When I was in my last 2 years of high school that the civil rights movement really opened up in this country. And I began to see the people who taught me the stories of Jesus, who told me that loving your neighbor is what God wants us to do, and that our role is to make the world a better place. I saw those same people angry, acting with hatred toward people of color.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I grew up in a very rigidly segregated society, and I was told it was God's will that the races be segregated, that black people were morally inferior to white people. It was a white
mm-hmm.
supremacist point of view.
Yeah.
Those were the same people who told me these wonderful stories, biblical stories,
right.
and the story survived the bigotry, and it was the story that shaped me, not the bigotry.
Right.
And so I'm grateful even to those who were so angry with with black people for wanting their full and equal rights in the
mm-hmm.
society. I'm grateful that they were able to teach me those stories because I still hold on to them.
I'm Welton Gaddy. My guest is Reverend Jimmy Creech, a hero for the cause of LGBT equality in the church, author of a fine new book called Adam's Gift. Jimmy, let's talk about what brings you back to Nebraska this week. You've spoken at a number of events this past week, and I'm fascinated with the event that took place this past Tuesday when you were observing National Coming Out Day on the lawn of your former church in Omaha, First United Methodist Church. There's something profoundly biblical about the fact that, one, you were not able to enter the sanctuary, and two, that the event had to be identified as an interfaith celebration for you, as I understand it, to be permitted to take part. Tell us what it's like to return to Omaha under these circumstances.
Well, first of all, I was warmly welcomed by those who invited me to come. Very gracious welcome. It was an ecumenical or actually an interreligious event for National Coming Out Day that was sponsored by the Heartland Clergy for Inclusion. What this was about was what is being done now in the future, the vision they have of being fully inclusive. And I was able to be here and to share in that and to speak a word of encouragement.
Jimmy, when you were standing there on that lawn, what was going on inside?
First of all, I felt like I was back home again.
Huh.
I was with family. This congregation is not like just another congregation I've served. We went through a tremendous amount together, even in a very short period of 2 years. And they are a gracious, wonderful, courageous congregation. I was also thrilled to know that so much progress has been made since the bishop would not allow me to stay and I had to leave in 1998. I grieve that I was not able to remain with them on their journey, but I am very grateful and proud of the witness that the congregation continues to make.
What have you done with anger, especially anger about the church?
I have been angry. I have felt hurt, but those have not been feelings that have endured very long. What I have lost, I've lost because of what I've done. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people have lost things because of who they are. That's a much more profound hurt.
Do you have a favorite moment or memory from all of your years of activism and the challenges that you've faced and overcome during these years?
A really positive one that comes to my mind is that when I was working with the North Carolina Council of Churches, we voted into membership the Metropolitan Community Church. We were the first state ecumenical body to vote into membership the Metropolitan Community Church. You know, the MCC has been trying to be a member of the National Council for 20 years or more, and it has been denied, and it was denied in other places, other states, but we were the first. The motion to approve the membership application from the MCC was made by a Roman Catholic priest, and it was overwhelmingly supported. That was a great moment.
Reverend Jimmy Creech, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you being with us today on State of Belief Radio. The book that you've written, Adam's Gift, a memoir of a pastor's calling to defy the church's persecution of lesbians, and gays is a marvelous contribution to this whole thought and history. Jimmy, thanks for being here.
Well, then it was my pleasure. Thank you very, very much.